Mia lived in the shadows of New York City, where towering skyscrapers loomed over her makeshift world. She was homeless, bound to a wheelchair after a car accident had stolen her mobility years ago. Despite her struggles, Mia had a radiant spirit that shone through the grim realities of her life. She found solace in her art. Her hands, though rough from the streets, created delicate, breathtaking sketches. With just a piece of charcoal and scraps of paper, she could bring strangers' faces to life, capturing their emotions in a way that made people stop and stare. If you're ready to be inspired, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell so you never miss a story like this that touches the heart. Stay with us, and let's dive into this beautiful journey together. Every morning, Mia rolled herself to her usual spot near a busy coffee shop. It was the perfect place to catch the attention of people rushing by. She spread out her drawings on the sidewalk, hoping someone would buy one. The money she made wasn't much, but it was enough for a meal or to fix the worn-out wheels on her chair. One sunny afternoon, as she worked on a sketch of a young couple walking hand in hand, her peaceful routine was interrupted. A tall man in a sharp gray suit, his phone pressed to his ear, strode by in a rush. He wasn't looking where he was going, and before Mia could say anything, his foot caught the edge of her display. In an instant, her carefully arranged sketches went flying, scattering across the sidewalk like fallen leaves. "Oh no!" Mia exclaimed, quickly bending down to gather her work. The man stopped, startled. "I'm so sorry," he said, his voice filled with genuine regret. He crouched down to help her, his phone call forgotten for the moment. "It's fine," Mia replied, though her tone was sharp. She didn't look at him as she frantically checked her sketches for smudges or damage. Once the drawings were back in her lap, the man pulled out his wallet. "Here," he said, handing her a crisp $100 bill. "For the trouble." Mia looked up at him for the first time. He was strikingly handsome, with bright blue eyes and a jawline that seemed carved out of stone. His neatly styled brown hair and tailored suit screamed wealth and power. Everything Mia's life wasn't. She didn't take the money. "I don't want your charity," she said firmly, meeting his gaze. The man looked surprised. "It's not charity. I just want to make up for—" "You want to make it up to me?" Mia interrupted, raising an eyebrow. "Then sit down and let me draw you." The man blinked, clearly caught off guard. "You want to draw me?" "Yes, you can keep your money, but I don't turn down a chance to sketch an interesting face," Mia replied with a small smirk. For a moment, the man hesitated, looking around as if worried someone might see him. Then, with a shrug and a slight smile, he sat down on the sidewalk, right next to her. "All right," he said. "You've got me. What's your name?" "Mia," she said simply, picking up her charcoal and a fresh piece of paper. "I'm Ethan," he said. "So Mia, how does this work? Do I smile? Pose?" "Just sit still and don't talk," Mia said, focusing on her work. Ethan chuckled softly but obeyed. As she sketched, he watched her. Her fingers moved with precision and grace, her eyes darting between him and the paper. Despite her rough circumstances, there was an undeniable elegance in the way she worked. In less than 20 minutes, Mia held up the finished portrait. It was stunning, capturing Ethan's sharp features with an almost lifelike depth. He stared at it in amazement. "Wow," he said. "This is incredible. How do you do that?" Mia shrugged. "It's just what I do." Ethan looked at her with newfound respect. "You've got real talent, Mia. You shouldn't be out here. People need to see this." Mia chuckled bitterly. "People don't care about someone like me, Ethan, but thanks for the compliment." Before he could argue, she handed him the portrait. "Here, keep it." "Are you sure?" he asked. Mia nodded. "Just don't trip over my stuff again." Ethan laughed, tucking the sketch under his arm. As he walked away, he couldn't shake the feeling that this chance encounter was more than just an accident. Something about Mia lingered in his mind. Little did he know, this moment marked the beginning of a connection that would change both their lives forever. Ethan couldn't shake the image of Mia from his mind. Her talent, her quiet defiance, and the way her eyes carried stories too heavy for her young face. All of it intrigued him. The portrait she had drawn of him was unlike anything he had ever seen. It didn't just look like him, it felt like him. She had captured something deeper, something even he couldn't quite explain. The next morning, Ethan returned to the coffee shop where he'd first met Mia. She was there, sitting in the same spot, surrounded by her sketches. She glanced up as he approached, a hint of surprise flicker across her face before she masked it with her usual calm. Just when you think this love story is like any other, something happens that will completely change the way you see them. Trust me, you won't believe what comes next. Stay tuned to find out how their love defied all odds. Back for another sketch? She asked, her tone teasing but guarded. Not exactly, Ethan replied, holding out 2 cups of coffee. I thought you might need this. Mia hesitated before taking the cup. Thanks, she said, though she eyed him warily. Ethan sat down on the edge of the sidewalk, glancing at her drawings. You know, I've been thinking, your work deserves more than a sidewalk display. Have you ever considered showcasing it in a gallery? Mia snorted, almost choking on her coffee. A gallery? Yeah, right. Do you see where I live? She gestured to the bustling streets around her. People like me don't belong in fancy places. Why not? Ethan asked, genuinely puzzled. Your art is incredible. It's better than half the stuff I've seen in galleries downtown. Mia shook her head, a small, bitter smile on her lips. You don't get it. People don't look at me and see an artist. They see a girl in a wheelchair begging for change. That's my world, Ethan. Ethan didn't argue, but he couldn't let it go. The thought of her talent being overlooked, wasted on people who barely gave her a second glance, frustrated him. Over the next few days, Ethan found excuses to visit Mia. He'd bring coffee or pastries, sometimes even small art supplies, fresh paper, better charcoal. At first, Mia was suspicious of his generosity, but she slowly began to warm up to him. They would sit together, talking in between her sketches. Ethan told her about his life as a tech entrepreneur, the long hours, the high-stakes deals, and the constant pressure to stay ahead. Mia listened, occasionally poking fun at how different their lives were. Let me get this straight, she said one afternoon, smirking. Your biggest problem is figuring out which watch to wear to a meeting? Ethan laughed. It's not that simple. Mia raised an eyebrow. It sounds pretty simple to me. Despite their banter, Ethan began to realize how little he actually knew about her. Whenever he tried to ask about her past, Mia would deflect. Why are you out here? He asked one day, hoping for a direct answer. Mia simply smiled, her eyes distant. The streets have too many secrets, Ethan. You don't need to know mine. The more she held back, the more Ethan wanted to understand her. She was like a puzzle with missing pieces, and he couldn't stop himself from trying to put them together. Then one morning, everything changed. Ethan arrived at the coffee shop as usual, but Mia wasn't there. Her spot on the sidewalk was empty, her sketches and supplies gone. At first, he thought she might be late, but as the hours passed, worry set in. He asked the barista if she had seen Mia, but the woman just shrugged. She's here one day, gone the next. That's how it is with people like her, she said dismissively. Ethan didn't leave. He spent the entire day searching the streets, asking anyone who might know her if they had seen her. No one had any answers. That night, as he sat in his penthouse apartment, staring at the portrait Mia had drawn of him, Ethan felt a strange emptiness. He hadn't realized how much he had started to look forward to their daily conversations, her sarcastic comments, and the way her eyes lit up when she talked about art. Mia had disappeared, and Ethan couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. For the first time in years, his carefully controlled world felt uncertain. Little did he know, Mia was facing her own battles, far away from the safety of her familiar corner. Ethan couldn't stop thinking about Mia. Every day that passed without seeing her made him more anxious. Where could she have gone? Was she safe? Unable to handle the uncertainty, he hired a private investigator to find her. The investigator worked quickly, piecing together bits of information from street vendors, shelter workers, and other homeless individuals. Ethan learned how tough life was for Mia and the risks she faced just to survive. It only made him more determined to bring her back to safety. Meanwhile, Mia's life had taken a dangerous turn. A local gang controlled the area where she usually sold her sketches. They didn't like outsiders, and Ethan's visits hadn't gone unnoticed. The gang leader, a man named Rico, started questioning her. "Who's the rich guy?" Rico had asked her one night, his tone threatening. "He's nobody," Mia replied, trying to stay calm. Just someone who bought my art. Rico didn't believe her. Rich guys don't hang around for no reason. You telling him stuff? Snitching on us? Mia shook her head, her heart pounding. No! I don't know anything about you. I don't care what you do. But Rico wasn't convinced. He gave her an ultimatum. Leave the area or face the consequences. Fearing for her life, Mia packed up her few belongings and fled. She found refuge in a decrepit shelter on the outskirts of the city, where the air was thick with despair. It was a place where people went when they had nowhere else to turn. Days turned into weeks, and Mia tried to stay invisible. She avoided sketching in public, worried it might attract unwanted attention. But the loneliness weighed on her. She missed the simple joy of drawing, and though she wouldn't admit it, she missed Ethan too. The private investigator eventually tracked her down. He informed Ethan, who wasted no time driving to the shelter. When he walked into the dim, crowded space, it took him a moment to find her. Mia was sitting in a corner, her wheelchair barely holding together, staring out a broken window. "Mia?" Ethan said softly, kneeling in front of her. She looked up, shocked and then angry. "What are you doing here?" "I came to help," he said, his voice firm but gentle. "You shouldn't be here. You don't understand this world," Mia yelled, her frustration spilling out. "This isn't your life, Ethan. You can't fix it with money or good intentions." Ethan didn't flinch. "I know I can't understand everything, but I care about you. I can't just leave you here." Mia turned away, her eyes welling up. She didn't want his pity, but deep down she was exhausted, tired of running, tired of being alone. "I can give you a safe place," Ethan said. "No strings attached. You don't have to trust me, but at least let me help you get back on your feet." Mia hesitated. She wanted to say no, to push him away, but something in his voice told her he was sincere. Reluctantly, she nodded. Ethan wasted no time. He moved her into a small apartment he owned, a modest but comfortable space far from the chaos of the streets. For the first time in years, Mia had a bed to sleep in, a lock on the door, and a roof that didn't leak. "Why are you doing this?" she asked him one night as they sat in the tiny living room. "Because you matter," Ethan said simply, "and no one should have to go through what you've been through." Mia didn't respond, but her heart softened. Maybe, just maybe, she could let herself believe in his kindness. Mia had slowly begun to trust Ethan. Living in the small apartment he provided, she found a sense of security she hadn't felt in years. It wasn't just the safety of four walls. It was Ethan's constant presence, his patience, and his genuine interest in her art. He encouraged her to sketch again, even bringing her new supplies and talking about how her work could inspire people. At first, Mia resisted. She had been let down too many times to believe in hope. But Ethan's unwavering support chipped away at her defenses. She started drawing again, not for the strangers on the street, but for herself. Slowly, her laughter returned, and she allowed herself to dream, if only a little. One evening, while Ethan was out running errands, Mia was tidying up the apartment when she accidentally knocked over his briefcase. Papers spilled out, and as she bent down to gather them, a single document caught her eye. The title read, "Creating Impact, a viral charity campaign featuring Mia's journey." Curiosity turned to dread as she skimmed the contents. The proposal detailed a marketing plan to showcase Mia's art and her story of overcoming homelessness. It described how Ethan's support and generosity could become a powerful narrative, boosting his brand while raising funds for charity. The words felt cold and calculated, reducing her life to a stepping stone for his personal gain. Mia's hands trembled as she put the paper back. When Ethan returned, she was waiting for him, her face pale and eyes blazing with anger. "You've been lying to me," she said, holding up the document. Ethan froze, his cheerful greeting dying on his lips. "Mia, wait. Don't," she snapped. "Don't try to explain. I thought you cared about me, but I'm just a project to you, a way to make yourself look good." "It's not what you think," Ethan said, his voice desperate. He stepped closer, but Mia wheeled her chair back, creating distance. "The evidence is right here," she said, her voice breaking. "Everything you've done, it wasn't for me. It was for your image." Ethan's heart sank. "I swear, Mia, I didn't write that. I didn't even know it existed until now." She shook her head, tears streaming down her cheeks. I trusted you, Ethan, and you betrayed me, just like everyone else. Mia, please listen to me, he begged, but she wouldn't hear it. Get out, she said firmly, her voice cold despite her tears. Ethan stood there, helpless. He wanted to explain, to fix it, but the pain in her eyes told him he had lost her trust. He nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. I'm sorry, Mia, he whispered before leaving. Once he was gone, Mia collapsed onto the couch, sobbing. She had let herself believe in him, believe that someone cared about her without expecting anything in return. But now she felt foolish and betrayed, as if the fragile hope she'd nurtured had been shattered. Meanwhile, Ethan was reeling. He couldn't understand how the document had ended up in his briefcase. Determined to uncover the truth, he confronted his business partner, Greg, who had been managing some of his charitable ventures. Did you write this? Ethan demanded, slamming the document onto Greg's desk. Greg didn't even flinch. Of course I did. It's a great idea, Ethan. Your association with Mia could be huge for your brand. Ethan's jaw clenched. This wasn't your call to make. I never approved this. Come on, Greg said, shrugging. You're always talking about making a difference. This is how we do it, by showing the world what you're capable of. Ethan's anger boiled over. You used her. You made it look like I was using her. Do you have any idea what you've done? Greg's dismissive attitude only fueled Ethan's rage. I'm done, he said. This partnership is over. You're making a mistake, Greg warned. No, Ethan replied firmly. The mistake was trusting you. Cutting ties with Greg cost Ethan more than just a business partner. It triggered a series of setbacks that jeopardized his company's future. But he didn't care. His only focus now was proving to Mia that his intentions had always been genuine. Ethan began a personal mission to redeem himself. He reached out to organizations that supported homeless artists, offering funding and resources in Mia's name. He worked tirelessly, hoping that his actions would speak louder than any words. Meanwhile, Mia sank deeper into despair. She stopped drawing, her art supplies gathering dust in the corner. Every time she thought of Ethan, a mix of anger and sadness overwhelmed her. She wanted to believe he had been honest, but the document's cold, calculated words haunted her. For the first time in a long while, she felt truly alone. And no matter how hard she tried to move forward, the betrayal lingered like a heavy weight on her heart. Neither of them realized it, but their paths were still destined to cross again. And when they did, everything would change. The night was unusually dark, with rain pounding against the windows of Mia's small apartment. Thunder rumbled in the distance, and lightning illuminated the sky in brief, jagged bursts. Inside, Mia sat alone, staring blankly at a sketchbook she hadn't touched in weeks. The echoes of her argument with Ethan haunted her, his pleas for understanding, clashing with the betrayal she'd felt reading that document. The storm grew fiercer, and suddenly Mia smelled something strange. Smoke. At first, she dismissed it, thinking it was just her imagination, but within seconds, the scent became overwhelming. She turned her wheelchair toward the door, but before she could reach it, flames erupted in the kitchen. Panic set in as the fire spread quickly. Mia tried to move, but the smoke was suffocating, and her wheelchair wheels caught on the edge of a rug. "Help!" she screamed, coughing violently. "Somebody, please help!" Across the street, Ethan was sitting in his car. He had been visiting the neighborhood daily, hoping for a chance to apologize, to explain. Tonight, the storm had driven most people indoors, leaving the streets eerily quiet. As he debated whether to knock on her door, he saw it, the faint flicker of flames through her apartment window. Without hesitation, Ethan bolted from the car and sprinted toward the building. Rain lashed against him as he pushed through the small crowd of neighbors gathering outside. "There's someone inside," he shouted, but no one moved to help. "You can't go in there," a man yelled, trying to hold him back. "It's too dangerous." "She's trapped," Ethan yelled, breaking free and rushing inside. The heat was unbearable, and the smoke stung his eyes as he navigated the narrow hallway toward Mia's apartment. "Mia," he called, his voice hoarse. "In here," she cried weakly, barely able to get the words out. Following her voice, Ethan found her slumped in her wheelchair, surrounded by flames. Without a second thought, he wrapped a wet blanket around her and scooped her up in his arms. The weight of her chair was too much to carry, so he left it behind, his only focus on getting her to safety. The journey out was a blur of searing heat and choking smoke, But Ethan didn't stop. Just as he stumbled through the doorway and onto the rain-soaked pavement, part of the ceiling collapsed behind him, sending sparks into the air. Paramedics arrived quickly, taking Mia and Ethan to the hospital. Ethan had suffered burns on his arms and cuts from broken glass, but his injuries were minor compared to the relief he felt knowing Mia was alive. At the hospital, Mia awoke to find Ethan sitting beside her bed, his arms bandaged but his face filled with concern. She tried to speak, but he shook his head. "Don't talk," he said softly. "Just rest." A nurse entered the room a few moments later, handing Ethan a note. "It's from Greg," he explained, his expression darkening. Mia's curiosity piqued as Ethan read the note aloud. Greg had confessed to writing the charity pitch without Ethan's consent, hoping to use it to advance his own career. The revelation was a relief, but Ethan's next words caught Mia off guard. "There's something else I need to tell you," he said, his voice heavy with emotion. "After I exposed Greg's corruption, my company collapsed. Investors pulled out, and I lost everything. I'm not a millionaire anymore, Mia. I don't have anything left." Mia stared at him, her mind spinning. "Why would you do that?" she asked, her voice trembling. "Because it was the right thing to do," Ethan replied simply, "and because I needed you to know the truth, even if it cost me everything." Mia's eyes filled with tears. For weeks, she had been drowning in feelings of betrayal, but now seeing the sincerity in Ethan's eyes and knowing the sacrifices he'd made, her walls crumbled. "I don't care about money," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I care about you. I always have." Ethan reached for her hand, his own trembling. "I thought I'd lost you," he said. "You didn't," she replied, squeezing his hand gently. "You saved me, in more ways than one." The storm outside had passed, but the storm between them had finally cleared as well. Together, they decided to face whatever came next, knowing that love, not wealth or status, was the foundation of their new beginning. The story of Ethan's selfless rescue spread quickly, capturing the attention of the media. Headlines praised his bravery, and interviews highlighted the dramatic fall of a millionaire who had risked everything for love and integrity. Offers to rebuild his business flooded in from investors eager to be associated with his inspiring tale. But Ethan surprised everyone by turning down every offer. "I've had the money," he told a reporter who asked why he wasn't jumping at the chance to rebuild his empire. "It didn't make me happy. What I've found now is far more meaningful." Instead, Ethan poured his energy into a new venture, an art foundation for underprivileged talents, inspired by Mia's journey. He used his remaining connections and influence to secure funding and create a space where street artists, like Mia had once been, could showcase their work and receive the support they needed to thrive. The foundation quickly gained traction, becoming a beacon of hope for struggling artists across the city. Mia, now fully healed and supported by Ethan's unwavering belief in her, took the lead in curating the foundation's first major exhibition. For weeks, she worked tirelessly, selecting pieces that reflected not just talent, but also raw, untold stories of resilience. Her own work was the centerpiece of the exhibition, a collection of sketches that chronicled her journey from the streets to the studio. The night of the gallery's grand opening was nothing short of magical. The space was filled with shimmering lights, the hum of excited chatter, and the vibrant energy of artists and admirers alike. Mia, dressed in a flowing gown Ethan had insisted on buying for her, looked around in awe. The same hands that once sketched for coins on a street corner now held champagne as she mingled with collectors and critics who marveled at her work. Ethan watched her from across the room, his heart swelling with pride. This was the woman who had taught him the value of resilience, who had shown him that wealth was more than money. It was passion, purpose, and love. As the evening reached its peak, Ethan tapped a glass to gather everyone's attention. The crowd quieted, turning to face him. "Thank you all for being here tonight," he began, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "This foundation is about giving a voice to those who deserve to be heard. It's about showing the world that talent can thrive in even the most unlikely places. And none of it would have been possible without Mia." The crowd erupted in applause as Mia's cheeks flushed. Ethan stepped closer, pulling a small velvet box from his pocket. "Mia," he said, his voice soft but resonating through the room, You've taught me what true wealth is. It's not about the money or the deals. It's about love, resilience, and the courage to rewrite our stories. He opened the box to reveal a simple yet elegant ring, crafted from a piece of metal he had shaped himself. I don't have the riches I once had, but I have something far more precious. I have you. Will you marry me? Mia's eyes filled with tears as the room fell silent, all eyes on her. She looked at Ethan, at the man who had risked everything for her, who had seen her worth when no one else had. Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes! The room erupted in cheers as Ethan slid the ring onto her finger. The moment was electric, filled with joy, love, and the promise of a future they would build together. Later that night, as they stood on the balcony of the gallery, overlooking the city lights, Ethan wrapped his arms around Mia. I thought I lost everything, he said, his voice barely above a whisper. But I found you, and that's worth more than anything. Mia leaned her head against his chest, her heart full. We found each other, she replied, and that's what matters. As the rain of confetti from the gallery drifted down onto the streets below, it seemed to symbolize the closing of one chapter and the beautiful beginning of another. Together, they had turned hardship into hope, proving that even in the darkest moments, love could cast the brightest light. What an amazing journey we've shared today. Love truly knows no boundaries, and this story proves that. If you were moved by this story, make sure to hit that like button and share it with others who need a little inspiration. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss an uplifting story. Thank you so much for watching, and I can't wait to see you in the next video. Until then, keep spreading love and positivity.